This is Tape 2, Side 2, The Advent of Divine Justice by Shoghi Effendi. Continuing in the middle of page 55. Quote, I hope, is the wish expressed by Abdu'l-Baha, that ye may cause that downtrodden race, Negro, to become glorious, and to be joined with the white race to serve the world of man with the utmost sincerity, faithfulness, love, and purity. Quote, one of the important questions, he has also written, which affect the unity and solidarity of mankind is the fellowship and equality of the white and colored races. Quote, you must attach great importance, writes Abdu'l-Baha in the Tablets of the Divine Plan, to the Indians, the original inhabitants of America, for these souls may be likened unto the ancient inhabitants of the Arabian Peninsula, who, prior to the revelations of Muhammad, were like savages. When the Mohammedan light shone forth in their midst, they become so enkindled that they shed illumination upon the world. Likewise, should these Indians be educated and properly guided, there can be no doubt that through the divine teachings they will become so enlightened that the whole earth will be illumined. Quote, if it is possible, Abdu'l-Baha has also written, send ye teachers to other portions of Canada, likewise dispatch ye teachers to Greenland and the home of the Eskimos. Quote, God willing, he further has written in those same tablets, the call of the kingdom may reach the ears of the Eskimos. Should you display an effort so that the fragrances of God may be diffused among the Eskimos, its effect will be very great and far-reaching. Quote, praise be to God, writes Abdu'l-Baha, that whatsoever hath been denounced in the blessed tablets unto the Israelites, and the things explicitly written in the letters of Abdu'l-Baha, are all being fulfilled. Some have come to pass, others will be revealed in the future. The ancient beauty hath in his sacred tablets explicitly written that the day of their abasement is over. His bounty will overshadow them, and this race will day by day progress and be delivered from its age-long obscurity and degradation. End quote. Page 56. Let those who are holding administrative positions in their capacity as members of either the National Spiritual Assembly or of the national, regional, or local teaching committees continually bear in mind the vital and urgent necessity of ensuring within as short a time as possible the formation in the few remaining states of the North American Republic and the provinces of the Dominion of Canada of groups, however small and rudimentary, of providing every facility within their power to enable these newly formed nuclei to evolve swiftly and along sound lines into properly functioning, self-sufficient, and recognized assemblies. To the laying of such foundations, the erection of such outposts, a work admittedly arduous yet sorely needed and highly inspiring, the individual members of the American Baha'i community must lend their unstinted, continual, and enthusiastic support. Wise as may be the measures which their elected representatives may devise, however practical and well-conceived the plans they formulate, such measures and plans can never yield any satisfactory results unless a sufficient number of pioneers have determined to make the necessary sacrifices and to volunteer to carry these projects into effect. To implant once and for all the banner of Baha'u'llah in the heart of these virgin territories, to erect the structural basis of his administrative order in their cities and villages, and to establish a firm and permanent anchorage for its institutions in the minds and hearts of their inhabitants, constitute, I firmly believe, the first and most significant step in the successive stages through which the teaching campaign, inaugurated under the 7-year plan, must pass. Whereas the external ornamentation of the Majlis Ashkar under this same plan has now entered the final phase in its development, the teaching campaign is still in its initial stages and is far from having expanded effectively its ramifications to either these virgin territories or to those republics that are situated in the South American continent. Page 57. The effort required is prodigious. The conditions under which these preliminary establishments are to be made are often unattractive and unfavorable, the workers who are in a position to undertake such tasks limited, and the resources they can command meager and inadequate. And yet, how often has the pen of Baha'u'llah assured us that, quote, should a man all alone arise in the name of Baha'u'llah and put on the armor of his love, him will the Almighty cause to be victorious, though the forces of earth and heaven be arrayed against him. End quote. Has he not written, "By God, besides whom is none other God? Should any one arise for the triumph of our cause, him will God render victorious, though tens of thousands of enemies be leagued against him. And if his love for me wax stronger, God will establish his ascendancy over all the powers of earth and heaven." Quote, "Consider the work of former generations," Abdu'l-Baha has written. "During the lifetime of Jesus Christ, the believing, firm souls were few and numbered, but the heavenly blessings descended so plentifully that in a number of years countless souls entered beneath the shadow of the gospel. God has said in the Quran, 'One grain will bring forth 7 sheaves, and every sheaf shall contain 100 grains.' In other words, 1 grain will become 700, and if God so wills, he will double these also. It has often happened that one blessed soul has become the cause of the guidance of a nation. Now we must not consider our ability and capacity, nay, rather we must fix our gaze upon the favors and bounties of God in these days, who has made of the drop of a sea and of the atom a sun." End quote. Let those who resolve to be the first to hoist the standard of such a cause under such conditions and in such territories nourish their souls with the sustaining power of these words, and, quote, "putting on the armor of his love," end quote, a love which must wax stronger as they persevere in their lonesome task, arise to adorn with the tale of their deeds the most brilliant pages ever written in their country's spiritual history. Quote, "Although," Abdu'l-Baha in the Tablets of the Divine Plan has written, "in most of the states and cities of the United States, praise be to God, his fragrances are diffused, and souls unnumbered are turning their faces and advancing toward the kingdom of God. Yet in some of the states the standard of unity is not yet upraised as it should be, nor are the mysteries of the holy books, such as the Bible, the Gospel, and the Quran, unraveled." Page 58. Through the concerted efforts of all the friends, the standard of unity must needs be unfurled in those states, and the divine teachings promoted, so that these states may also receive their portion of the heavenly bestowals and a share of the most great guidance. Quote, "The future of the Dominion of Canada," he in another tablet of the Divine Plan has asserted, "is very great, and the events connected with it infinitely glorious. The eye of God's loving kindness will be turned towards it, and it shall become the manifestations of the favors of the All-Glorious." Again I repeat, he in that same tablet reaffirms his previous statement, that the future of Canada, whether from a material or a spiritual standpoint, is very great. End quote. No sooner is this initial step taken, involving as it does the formation of at least one nucleus in each of these virgin states and provinces and the North American continent, than the machinery for a tremendous intensification of a high concerted effort must be set in motion, the purpose of which should be the reinforcement of the noble exertions which only a few isolated believers are now making for the awakening of the nations of Latin America to the call of Baha'u'llah. Not until this second phase of the teaching campaign under the 7-year plan has been entered can the campaign be regarded as fully launched, or the plan itself as having attained the most decisive stage in its evolution. So powerful will be the effusions of divine grace that will be poured forth upon a valiant community that has already in the administrative sphere erected, in all the glory of its exterior ornamentation, its chief edifice, and in the teaching field raised aloft, in every state and province in the North American continent, the banner of its faith. So great will be these effusions that its members will find themselves overpowered by the evidences of their regenerative power. Page 59. The Inter-America Committee must at such a stage, nay, even before it is entered, rise to the level of its opportunities and display a vigor, a consecration, an enterprise as will be commensurate with the responsibilities it has shouldered. It should not for a moment be forgotten that Central and Southern America embrace no less than 20 independent nations, constituting approximately 1/3 of the entire number of the world's sovereign states, and are destined to play an increasingly important part in the shaping of the world's future destiny. With the world contracting into a neighborhood, and the fortunes of its races, nations, and peoples becoming inextricably interwoven, the remoteness of these states of the Western Hemisphere is vanishing, and the latent possibilities in each of them are becoming increasingly apparent. When the second stage in the progressive unfoldment of teaching activities and enterprises under the 7-year plan is reached, and the machinery required for its prosecution begins to operate, the American believers, the stout-hearted pioneers of this mighty movement, must, guided by the unfailing light of Baha'u'llah and in strict accordance with the plan laid out by Abdu'l-Baha and acting under the direction of their National Spiritual Assembly and assured of the aid of the Inter-America Committee, launch an offensive against the powers of darkness, of corruption, and of ignorance, an offensive that must extend to the uttermost end of the southern continent and embrace within its scope each of the 20 nations that compose it. Let some at this very moment gird up their loins of their endeavor, flee their native towns and cities and states, forsake their country, and, putting their whole trust in God as the best provision for their journey, set their faces and direct their steps towards those distant climes, those virgin fields, those unsurrendered cities, and bend their energies to capture the citadels of men's hearts which, as Baha'u'llah has written, the hosts of revelation and of utterance can subdue. Page 60. Let them not tarry until such time as their fellow laborers will have passed the first stage in their campaign of teaching, but let them rather from this very hour arise to usher in the opening phase of what will come to be regarded as one of the most glorious chapters in the international history of their faith. Let them at the very outset teach their own selves that their speech may attract the hearts of their hearers. Let them regard the triumph of their faith as their supreme objective. Let them not consider the largeness or smallness of the receptacle that carries the measure of grace that God poureth in this age. Let them disencumber themselves of all attachment to this world and the vanities thereof. And with that spirit of detachment which Abdu'l-Baha exemplified and wished them to emulate, bring these diversified peoples and countries to the remembrance of God and His supreme manifestation. Let His love be, quoting, a storehouse of treasure for their souls, on the day when, quote, every pillar shall tremble, when the very skins of men shall creep, when all eyes shall stare up with terror. Let their, quote, souls be aglow with the flame of the undying fire that burneth in the midmost heart of the world, in such wise that the waters of the universe shall be powerless to cool down its ardor. Let them be, quote, unrestrained as the wind, which neither the sight of desolation nor the evidences of prosperity can either pain or please. Let them, quote, unloose their tongues and proclaim unceasingly His cause. Let them, quote, proclaim that which the most great Spirit will inspire them to utter in the service of the cause of their Lord. Let them, quote, beware lest they contend with anyone, nay, strive to make him aware of the truth with kindly manner and most convincing exhortation. Let them, quote, wholly for the sake of God proclaim His message, and with that same spirit accept whatever response their words may evoke in their hearers. Let them not for one moment forget that the, quote, faithful Spirit shall strengthen them through its power, and that, quote, a company of His chosen angels shall go forth with them, as bidden by Him who is the Almighty, the All-Wise. Let them ever bear in mind, quote, how great is the blessedness that awaiteth them that have attained the honor of serving the Almighty. And remember that, quote, such a service is indeed the prince of all goodly deeds and the ornament of every goodly act, end quote. Page 61. And finally, let these soul-stirring words of Baha'u'llah, as they pursue their course throughout the length and breadth of the Southern American continent, be ever ready on their lips, a solace to their hearts, a light on their path, a companion in their loneliness, and a daily sustenance in their journeys. Quoting, O wayfarer in the path of God, take thou thy portion of the ocean of His grace, and deprive not thyself of the things that lie hidden in its depths. A dewdrop out of this ocean would, if shed upon all that are in the heavens and on earth, suffice to enrich them with the bounty of God, the Almighty, the All-Knowing, the All-Wise. With the hands of renunciation draw forth from its life-giving waters, and sprinkle therewith all created things, that they may be cleansed from all man-made limitations, and may approach the mighty seat of God, this hallowed and resplendent spot. Be not grieved as thou performest it thyself alone. Let God be all-sufficient for thee. Proclaim the cause of thy Lord unto all who are on the heavens and on the earth. Should any man respond to thy call, lay bare before him the pearls of the wisdom of the Lord thy God, which his Spirit hath sent down upon thee, and be thou of them that truly believe. And should any one recite thy offer, turn thou away from him, and put thy trust and confidence in the Lord of all worlds. By the righteousness of God, whoso openeth his lips in this day, and maketh mention of the name of his Lord, the host of divine inspiration shall descend upon him from the heaven of my name, the all-knowing, the all-wise. On him shall also descend the concourse on high, each bearing aloft a chalice of pure light. Thus hath it been foreordained in the realm of God's revelation, by the behest of him who is the all-glorious, the most powerful. End quote. Let these words of Abdu'l-Baha, gleaned from the tablets of the divine plan, ring likewise in their ears as they go forth, assured and unafraid on his mission. Quote, O ye apostles of Baha'u'llah, may my life be sacrificed for you. Behold the portals which Baha'u'llah hath opened before you. Consider how exalted and lofty is the station you are destined to attain. Page 62. How unique the favors with which you have been endowed. Quote, My thoughts are turned towards you, and my heart leaps within me at your mention. Could ye know how my soul gloweth with your love, so great a happiness would flood your hearts as to cause you to become enamored with each other. The full measure of your success is as yet unrevealed, its significance still unapprehended. Ere long ye will, with your own eyes, witness how brilliantly every one of you, even as a shining star, will radiate in the firmament of your country the light of divine guidance, and will bestow upon his people the glory of an everlasting life. Quote, I fervently hope that in the near future the whole earth may be stirred and shaken by the results of your achievements. The Almighty will no doubt grant you the help of His grace, will invest you with the tokens of His might, and will endue your souls with the sustaining power of His Holy Spirit. Quote, Be not concerned with the smallness of your numbers, neither be oppressed by the multitude of an unbelieving world. Exert yourselves, your mission is unspeakably glorious. Should success crown your enterprise, America will assuredly evolve into a center from which waves of spiritual power will emanate, and the throne of the kingdom of God will, in the plenitude of its majesty and glory, be firmly established. End quote. It should be remembered that the carrying out of the 7-year plan involves, insofar as the teaching work is concerned, no more than the formation of at least one center in each of the Central and South American republics. The 100th anniversary of the birth of the faith of Baha'u'llah should witness, if the plan already launched is to meet with success, the laying in each of these countries of a foundation, however rudimentary, on which the rising generation of the American believers may, in the opening years of the 2nd century of the Baha'i era, be able to build. Theirs will be the task, in the course of successive decades, to extend and reinforce those foundations, and to supply the necessary guidance, assistance, and encouragement that will enable the widely scattered groups of believers in those countries to establish independent and properly constituted local assemblies, and thereby erect the framework of the administrative order of their faith. Page 63. The erection of such a framework is primarily the responsibility of those whom the community of the North American believers have converted to the divine message. It is a task which must involve, apart from the immediate obligation of enabling every group to evolve into a local assembly, the setting up of the entire machinery of the administrative order in conformity with the spiritual and administrative principles governing the life and activities of every established Baha'i community throughout the world. No departure from these cardinal and clearly enunciated principles, embodied and preserved in Baha'i national and local constitutions common to all Baha'i communities, can under any circumstances be tolerated. This, however, is a task that concerns those who, at a later period, must arise to further a work which, to all intents and purposes, has not yet been effectively started. To pave the way in a more systematic manner for the laying of the necessary foundation on which such permanent national and local institutions can be reared and securely established, is a task that will very soon demand the concentrated attention of the prosecutors of the 7-year plan. No sooner has their immediate obligation in connection with the opening up of the few remaining territories in the United States and Canada been discharged than a carefully laid out plan should be conceived, aiming at the establishment of such a foundation. As already stated, The provision for these vast preliminary undertakings, the scope of which must embrace the entire area occupied by the Central and South American republics, constitutes the very core and must ultimately decide the fate of the teaching campaign conducted under the 7-year plan. Upon this campaign must depend not only the effectual discharge of the solemn obligations undertaken in connection with the present plan, but also the progressive unfoldment of the subsequent stages essential to the realization of Abdu'l-Baha's vision of the part the American believers are to play in the worldwide propagation of their cause. Page 64. These undertakings, preliminary as they are to the strenuous and organized labors by which future generations of believers in the Latin American countries must distinguish themselves, require in turn, without a moment's delay, on the part of the National Spiritual Assembly and of both the National Teaching and Inter-America Committees, painstaking investigations preparatory to the sending of settlers and itinerant teachers whose privilege will be to raise the call of a new day in a new continent. I can only, in my desire to be of some service to those who are to assume such tremendous responsibilities and to suffer such self-denial, attempt to offer a few helpful suggestions which I trust will facilitate the accomplishment of the great work to be achieved in the very near future. To this work that must constitute an historic landmark of first-class importance when completed, the energies of the entire community must be resolutely consecrated. The number of Baha'i teachers, be they settlers or travelers, must be substantially increased. The material resources to be placed at their disposal must be multiplied and efficiently administered. The literature with which they should be equipped must be vastly augmented. The publicity that should aid them in the distribution of such literature should be extended, centrally organized, and vigorously conducted. The possibilities latent in these countries should be diligently exploited and systematically developed. The various obstacles raised by the widely varying political and social conditions obtaining in these countries should be closely surveyed and determinedly surmounted. In a word, no opportunity should be neglected and no effort spared to lay as broad and solid a basis as possible for the progress and development of the greatest teaching enterprise ever launched by the American Baha'i community. The careful translation of such important Baha'i writings as are related to the history, the teachings, or the administrative order of the faith, and their wide and systematic dissemination in vast quantities and throughout as many of these republics as possible, and in languages that are most suitable and needed, would appear to be the chief and most urgent measure to be taken simultaneously with the arrival of the pioneer workers in those fields. Page 65. Quoting, "Books and pamphlets," writes Abdu'l-Baha in one of the tablets of his divine plan, quote, "must be either translated or composed in the languages of these countries and islands to be circulated in every part and in all directions." End quote. In countries where no objections can be raised by the civil authorities or any influential circles, this measure should be reinforced by the publication in various organs of the press of carefully worded articles and letters designed to impress upon the general public certain features of the stirring history of the faith and the range and character of its teachings. Every laborer in those fields, whether as traveling teacher or settler, should, I feel, make it his chief and constant concern to mix in a friendly manner with all sections of the population, irrespective of class, creed, nationality, or color, to familiarize himself with their ideas, tastes, and habits, to study the approach best suited to them, to concentrate, patiently and tactfully, on a few who have shown marked capacity and receptivity, and to endeavor with extreme kindness to implant such love, zeal, and devotion in their hearts as to enable them to become, in turn, self-sufficient and independent promoters of the faith in their respective localities. Quote, "Consort with all men, O people of Baha," as Baha'u'llah's admonition, "in a spirit of friendliness and fellowship. If ye be aware of a certain truth, if ye possess a jewel of which others are deprived, share it with them in a language of utmost kindness and goodwill. If it be accepted, if it fulfill its purpose, your object is attained. If anyone should refuse it, leave him unto himself, and beseech God to guide him. Beware lest ye deal unkindly with him. A kindly tongue is the lodestone of the hearts of men. It is the bread of the Spirit. It clotheth the words with meaning. It is the fountain of the light of wisdom and understanding." End quote. Page 66. An effort, moreover, can and should be made, not only by representative Baha'i bodies, but also by prospective teachers, as well as by other individual believers, deprived of the privilege of visiting those shores or of settling on that continent, to seize every opportunity that presents itself to make the acquaintance and awaken the genuine interests of such people who are either citizens of these countries or are in any way connected with them, whatever be their interests or profession. Through the kindness shown them, or any literature which may be given them, or any connection which they may establish with them, the American believers can thereby sow such seeds in their hearts as might, in future circumstances, germinate and yield the most unexpected results. Care, however, should at all times be exercised, lest in their eagerness to further the international interests of the faith, they frustrate their purpose and turn away, through any act that might be misconstrued as an attempt to proselytize and bring undue pressure upon them, those whom they wish to win over to their cause. I will particularly direct my appeal to those American believers, sore pressed as they are by the manifold, the urgent, and ever-increasing issues that confront them at the present hour, who may find it possible, whatever be their calling or employment, whether as businessmen, school teachers, lawyers, doctors, writers, office workers, and the like, to establish permanently their residence in such countries as may offer them a reasonable prospect of earning the means of livelihood. They will, by their action, be relieving the continually increasing pressure on their teaching fund, which, in view of its restricted dimensions, must provide, when not otherwise available, the traveling and other expenses to be incurred in connection with the development of this vast undertaking. Should they find it impossible to take advantage of so rare and sacred a privilege, let them, mindful of the words of Baha'u'llah, determine each according to the means at his or her disposal, to appoint a deputy who, on that believer's behalf, will arise and carry out so noble an enterprise. "Center your energies," are Baha'u'llah's words, quoting, "in the propagation of the faith of God. Whoso is worthy of so high a calling, let him arise and promote it. Whoso is unable, it is his duty to appoint him who will, in his stead, proclaim this revelation, whose power hath caused the foundations of the mightiest structures to quake, every mountain to be crushed into dust, and every soul to be dumbfounded." End quote. Page 67. As to those who have been able to leave their homes and countries and to serve in those regions, whether temporarily or permanently, a special duty, which must continually be borne in mind, devolves upon them. It should be one of their chief aims to keep, on the one hand, in constant touch with the National Committee specifically entrusted with the promotion of their work, and to cooperate, on the other, by every means possible and in the utmost harmony with their fellow believers in those countries, whatever the field in which they labor, whatever their standing, ability, or experience. Through the performance of their first duty, they will derive the necessary stimulus and obtain the necessary guidance that will enable them to prosecute effectively their mission, and will also, through their regular reports to that committee, be imparting to the general body of their fellow believers the news of the latest developments in their activities. By fulfilling their other duty, they will ensure the smooth efficiency, facilitate the progress, and avert any untoward incidents that might handicap the development of their common enterprise. The maintenance of the close contact and harmonious relationships between the Inter-America Committee, entrusted with the immediate responsibility of organizing such a far-reaching enterprise, and the privileged pioneers who are actually executing that enterprise and extending its ramifications far and wide, as well as among these pioneers themselves, would set, apart from its immediate advantages, a worthy and inspiring example to generations still yet to be born, who are to carry on, with all its increasing complexities, the work which is being initiated at present. Page 68. It would no doubt be of exceptional importance and value, particularly in these times when the various restrictions imposed in those countries make it difficult for a considerable number of Baha'i pioneers to establish their residence and earn their livelihood in those states. If certain ones among the believers, whose income, however slender, provides them with the means of an independent existence, would so arrange their affairs as to be able to reside indefinitely in those countries, The sacrifices involved, the courage, faith, and perseverance it demands, are no doubt very great. Their value, however, can never be properly assessed at the present time, and the limitless reward which they who demonstrate them will receive can never be adequately depicted. Quoting, "They that have forsaken their country," is Baha'u'llah's own testimony, "for the purpose of teaching our cause, these shall the faithful spirit strengthen through its power. By my life, no act, however great, can compare with it, except such deeds as have been ordained by God, the All-Powerful, the Most Mighty. Such a service is indeed the prince of all goodly deeds, and the ornament of every goodly act." End quote. Such a reward, it should be noted, is not to be regarded as purely an abstract blessing confined to the future life, but also as a tangible benefit which such courage, faith, and perseverance can alone confer in this material world. The solid achievements, spiritual as well as administrative, which in the faraway continent of Australasia, and more recently in Bulgaria, representative believers from both Canada and the United States have accomplished, proclaim in terms unmistakable the nature of those prizes which even in this world such sterling heroism is bound to win. Whoso, Baha'u'llah in a memorable passage extolling those of his loved ones who have, quote, journeyed through the countries in his name and for his praise, has written, quote, "hath attained their presence, will glory in their meeting, and all that dwell in every land will be illumined by their memory." End quote. I am moved at this juncture as I am reminded of the share which, ever since the inception of the faith in the West, the handmaids of Baha'u'llah, as distinguished from the men, have had in opening up single-handed so many such diversified and widely scattered countries over the whole surface of the globe, not only to pay a tribute to such apostolic fervor as is truly reminiscent of those heroic men who were responsible for the birth of the faith of Baha'u'llah, but also to stress the significance of such preponderating share which the women of the West have had and are having in the establishment of his faith throughout the whole world. Quote, "Among the miracles," Abdu'l-Baha himself has testified, "which distinguish the sacred dispensation, is this, that women have evinced a greater boldness than men when enlisted in the ranks of the faith." End quote. So great and splendid a testimony applies in particular to the West, and though it has received thus far abundant and convincing confirmation, must, as the years roll away, be further reinforced as the American believers usher in the most glorious phase of their teaching activities under the 7-year plan. The boldness which, in the words of Abdu'l-Baha, has characterized their accomplishments in the past must suffer no eclipse as they stand on the threshold of still greater and nobler accomplishments. Nay, rather, it must, in the course of time and throughout the length and breadth of the vast and virgin territories of Latin America, be more convincingly demonstrated and win for the beloved cause victories more stirring than any it has yet achieved. To the Baha'i youth of America, moreover, I feel a word should be addressed in particular, as I survey the possibilities which a campaign of such gigantic proportions has to offer to the eager and enterprising spirit that so powerfully animates them in the service of the cause of Baha'u'llah. Though lacking in experience and faced with insufficient resources, yet the adventurous spirit which they possess, and the vigor, the alertness, and optimism they have thus far so consistently shown, qualify them to play an active part in arousing the interest and in securing the allegiance of their fellow youth in those countries. No greater demonstration can be given to the peoples of both continents of the youthful vitality and the vibrant power animating the life and the institutions of the nascent faith of Baha'u'llah than an intelligent, persistent, and effective participation of the Baha'i youth of every race, nationality, and class in both the teaching and administrative spheres of Baha'i activity. Page 70. Through such a participation, the critics and enemies of the faith, watching with varying degrees of skepticism and resentment the evolutionary processes of the cause of God and its institutions, can best be convinced of the indubitable truth that such a cause is intensely alive, is sound to its very core, and its destinies in safekeeping. I hope and indeed pray that such a participation may not only redound to the glory, the power, and the prestige of the faith, but may also react so powerfully on the spiritual lives and galvanize to such an extent the energies of the youthful members of the Baha'i community as to empower them to display in a fuller measure their inherent capacities and to unfold a further stage in their spiritual evolution under the shadow of the faith of Baha'u'llah. Faithful to the provisions of the charter laid down by the pen of Abdu'l-Baha, I feel it my duty to draw the special attention of those to whom it has been entrusted to the urgent needs of and the special position enjoyed by the Republic of Panama, both in view of its relative proximity to the heart and center of the faith in North America and of its geographical position as the link between two continents. Quoting, "All the above countries," Abdu'l-Baha, referring to the Latin states in one of the tablets of the Divine Plan, has written, quote, "have importance, but especially the Republic of Panama, wherein the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans come together through the Panama Canal. It is a center for travel and passage from America to other continents of the world, and in the future it will gain most great importance. Likewise," he again has written, quote, "ye must give great attention to the Republic of Panama, for in that point the Occident and the Orient find each other united through the Panama Canal, and it is also situated between the two great oceans. That place will become very important in the future. The teachings, once established there, will unite the East and the West, the North and the South." Page 71. End quote. So privileged a position surely demands the special and prompt attention of the American Baha'i community. With the Republic of Mexico already opened up to the faith, and with a spiritual assembly properly constituted in its capital city, the southward penetration of the faith of Baha'u'llah into a neighboring country is but a natural and logical step, and should, it is to be hoped, prove to be not a difficult one. No efforts should be spared, and no sacrifice be deemed too great, to establish, even though it be a very small group in a republic occupying, both spiritually and geographically, so strategic a position. A group which, in view of the potency with which the words of Abdu'l-Baha have already endowed it, cannot but draw to itself, as soon as it is formed, the outpouring grace of the Abha kingdom, and evolve with such marvelous swiftness as to excite the wonder and the admiration of even those who have already witnessed such stirring evidences of the force and power of the faith of Baha'u'llah. Preference, no doubt, should be given by all would-be pioneers, as well as by the members of the Inter-America Committee, to the spiritual needs of this privileged republic, though every effort should, at the same time, be exerted to introduce the faith, however tentatively, to the republics of Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Costa Rica, which would link it in an unbroken chain with its mother assemblies in the North American continent. Obstacles, however formidable, should be surmounted. The resources of the Baha'i treasury should be liberally expanded on its behalf, and the ablest and most precious exertions should be consecrated to the cause of its awakening. The erection of yet another outpost of the faith in its heart will constitute, I firmly believe, a landmark in the history of the formative period of the faith of Baha'u'llah in the New World. It will create limitless opportunities, galvanize the efforts, and reinvigorate the life of those who will have accomplished this feat, and infuse immense courage and boundless joy into the hearts of the isolated groups and individuals in the neighboring and distant republics, and exert intangible yet powerful spiritual influences on the life and future development of its peoples. This is the end of Side 2, Tape 2, ending on page 72. Please go to Tape 3 for continuation and conclusion.